I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had a safe, fun Labor Day weekend. Seeing that nobody's in cast or a lot of the staff is here, that must be the case. With that, I guess we'll get right to it, and looking for someone to make a motion to approve the minutes from August 27th, or is there any modifications?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Dahleden. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes from August 27th are approved. Today's agenda, is there any additions or modifications to today's agenda?
Mr. Chair, just one small thing with consent item E. That's listed to send it to the September workshop. Unfortunately, due to schedules, let's move it to the November workshop. So just a small correction, it'll be the November 12th workshop.
No October one? Or that one's already booked up?
That one's,
Oh, E,
We canceled that one.
one on the bottom, first page here.
Yeah.
So,
5-11, okay.
it's going to November.
yep.
Mr. Chair, with that correction, I will move today's agenda.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Hewsome, second by Commissioner Dahleden to approve today's agenda. Is there any other discussions? All right, hearing no other discussions. Just one thing on the email this morning, were we going to schedule today to have a closed session? Or are you going to schedule that next week?
It'll be out a little bit. We have a call to discuss that with the consultant on later in the week. So
Okay.
I don't have a date, unfortunately, nailed down between all the parties.
So I guess we'll circle back later on at that point.
We'll have to,
Just because I know it's
unfortunately,
next
yes.
week and no board meeting, I just wanted to, hopefully we
Correct.
could pin something down, but, okay.
I was hoping to have a date. Unfortunately, the stars haven't aligned on that one.
All right. Understandable. It was last minute. All right, well, we have a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the agenda is approved. Today's consent agenda. Anyone have any items they'd like to remove for discussion? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve today's consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Dahleden,
Second.
second by Commissioner Potter. Is there any other further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Today's consent agenda is approved. We'll move to the 9:02 timed item. We're just about right on time. Veteran Services Officer Greg Picard is going to entertain us with some information.
Morning, Board. So this is, it's that time of year again to approve our next year's veteran grant from the state. It's $15,000 that goes to operational enhancement for the Veteran Service Office, basically to help us do our job over and above what you guys provide. Pretty straightforward, same as last year. Our last year grant was closed out. We used every single dollar. We used all 15,000. And again, I switched it up this year. Instead of accounting for every single line item, because you guys added a new CVSO, assistant CVSO last year, we're just gonna use part of his salary as the grant. So it cuts down on our administration cost. We get the same amount of money to use towards the Veteran Service Office. And it saves the county my time and Bob's, the auditor's team, running reports and stuff like that. It's just much more efficient use of the dollars.
Excellent.
Yep.
So I guess I'll look for a motion to adopt the
So moved.
resolution. We have a motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Dahleden, to approve the 2020 County Veteran Services Operational Enhancement Grant by the state. It is a resolution. Commissioner, or is there any other discussion?
Just one thing for your, for what we just put off to November, you misspelled my name.
Did I?
Again.
Again?
Again.
Way off.
I don't think he did it before.
I think he does.
I will correct
I think he does
that.
it on purpose.
I did. I pulled it off. I spell checked it, so obviously it's Microsoft's fault.
I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that one.
They know him.
So any other discussion? Hearing none. It's a resolution. Commissioner Potter?
Aye.
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 Resolution passes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Auditor Treasurer, Mr. Bob Hevola, for the final orders on the creation of the Lake John Improvement District.
Yes, board, in your packet is the resolution to officially create Lake John Lake Improvement District. Ask you to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the Lake John's Improvement District.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Hewsome for the final adoption of the Lake John Improvement District. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this, these are the initial board of directors. Refresh my memory, when do they have a meeting to formally make these? Because we appoint the first set, and then there's a meeting, annual meeting that they?
Annual.
Correct.
So they'll be appointed till sometime when they get themselves together, maybe have an annual meeting, like maybe next June or something?
They have to have an annual meeting. If they're going to levy funds to receive next year, they would have to be doing that in a quite substantial hurry here, wouldn't they?
No, I didn't think that they're going to be able to do anything until next.
Because they couldn't do anything, because as late as it is this point, they couldn't get funds for next year,
Correct.
correct? They have to wait till the following year, so they probably won't meet till the first of the year, would be my guess.
No, I thought it was like June or August where they have to, when they have their next meeting.
Our Lake Association meets in August, annual
Most
meeting.
lake associations meet in August.
That's
or-
what I was thinking,
Or
that
lake
there was
improvement
something.
districts also.
So, Mr. Chair, on the page 204 of the resolution, it does state that the board of directors at the first annual meeting shall be elected to staggered terms.
Correct.
So whenever that first meeting is, and they'll publish that.
Yeah, it's not on our documents here.
Did we make a motion?
Yes, it's already been,
Yep.
And I seconded.
yeah, Mr.
Motion by
Chair.
Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Hewsome. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Potter.
The reason for that comment is not just for us, but for the public.
Right.
That's out there, because they won't read through this and won't catch that, but let them know that, hey, if these are the ones appointed out of the gate, get to the annual meeting. If you want to replace any of them or want to be one of them, start lobbying now.
Good point.
Seeing that I haven't heard nobody contacted me on it regarding the members that are appointed on there, so I'm guessing there must not be any concern being interim placements at this time. There's nobody in the audience for that either. We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. It's a resolution. Commissioner Hewsome?
Aye.
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 Resolution passes. Thank you. Mr. Virgil Hawkins, accept the 2018 Highway Department Annual Report. If everybody got that wonderful reading that we got from a couple weeks ago,
2 weeks ago, so
I hope everybody got the audio version that Virgil puts out there.
we haven't done that on Audible yet, but we're working on that. But we have the report we distributed before, and today we'd like to have the board accept it. If there's any questions, here to answer those.
Mr. Chair, I think this is wonderful that we get this every year, and everything is spelled out, and it helps pull everything together, because you're doing more and more projects, it seems, and so this is great.
I know it's a lot of material there, but really the summary part is really some good reading, pages 2.1 to 2.7, if you haven't gone through that already.
No, it is, it's nice to have all this information. It's very thorough, too.
It is.
You can figure out how much it costs per mile for salting and all that sort of stuff.
And I give credit to our highway accountant, Patsy, that does a great job assembling this and putting it together.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2018 annual report.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Della and second by Commissioner Potter to approve the 2018 Highway Department Annual Report. Is there any other discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Potter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Virgil, I saw 2 new trucks in the garage last week. Are they replacing the 2001 Sterling? Are those the ones they're replacing?
Yeah, whatever we had budgeted for this year, they,
I'm not sure what, I was trying to disseminate which two trucks were the next to cycle out. And those are there's a 2001 and 2004 Sterling, that the two oldest, so I was just assuming that those, but I figured I'd ask
that's
you.
what I would guess. They'd be replacing our oldest ones in the fleet.
Oldest ones, okay, thank you.
So with that, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, it's all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Annual report's approved, thank you.
Thank you.
We still have time for, yep, all right, we're running right above schedule here for a couple minutes here, but I'll bring up Karen anyways, because by the time she gets ready to present for the Great River Regional Library, we'll be right about.
Karen's a librarian, she can tell us a story.
Good morning. Thank you for some time this morning. We appreciate the county board and all the efforts you do in Wright County to make this a better place for all of our residents. I'm Karen Punsack, Executive Director for Great River Regional Library. I have our Accounting and Distribution Supervisor, Erin Murphy, with me today. Typically, we've done this presentation as part of the budget cycle. Schedules didn't really work out that way, so we brought it to a county board just to give you an overview of what the 2020 budget for the library is shaping up to look like. As you know, we have over 108,000 borrowers across the region and 9 libraries here in Wright County. 30,000 people in Wright County have an active library card. That means they've used it at least once in the last 3 years to either check out a book or use a computer. Not all of our services require library cards. Coming to a legacy program, for example, we don't ask for library cards to attend that. So it's a reflection of our activity, but not a whole picture. You can see we had almost 1 million items checked out of it just in Wright County alone last year. So it's a pretty substantial use of library services, especially considering some of our smaller libraries are only open limited hours. One of our experimental pilot projects is Sartell's GRRL to Go. That is in its second year of the pilot. It's a locker system that's placed in the Sartell Community Center, and you can see a picture of the locker on the left, and then on the right there is a book drop. And what happens is, if you look at that terminal just to the left of the locker there, this kiosk allows people to scan their library card, and then the locker pops open and checks the books out to them. So they can place holds just like they would at a library, and then the books are loaded by Erin's department to each individual patron. So it's an experiment we've been running, and it's exceeding capacity most of the time, so it's very well received. One of our biggest challenges is that it's very well received. That particular project was paid for by the city of Sartell as part of the pilot, so we're seeing how that goes, and after 3 years we'll be evaluating and deciding what to do next. So stay tuned. It's an interesting experiment.
Sure.
Sure.
Back to that.
Yeah.
Is that unit available to be expanded, to increase in size, since you're right?
Yes. So there's 44 lockers altogether right now. That central tower is kind of the hub that connects directly to our integrated library system. So as soon as somebody scans a card and checks out a book, we know in Staples that that book's checked out. That is the most expensive piece. The other 4 towers, you can get different sized lockers. So these are the smaller ones. They also have some bigger ones. And you can expand it to what, 80?
I think you can get 4 more towers.
Yeah, we could go bigger if we
It'll be
needed
84
to.
total.
I can't remember. They're pretty
88.
expensive though. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
we're adding them as we go. We don't want to overbuild
Yeah.
the system either, so.
But it's good to know that it's expandable with your capacity
Yep,
almost.
yep, you
maxed
can make
out.
it bigger.
They're about 7,000 a tower.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you think about what the cost of a
Staff.
person, staff and real property is.
It's got the most hours of access of all of the libraries because the community center is open from, I think, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. So no other library in the system is open 7 days a week. That's one of the things people like the most about it is it's just available when they can get there.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Houston.
Karen, so do they order these books ahead of time so they can be in the locker and then they come and pick them up? Is that?
Yep, it's
Okay.
just like placing a hold at a library.
Okay,
They just
got
choose
it.
Sartell as their pickup location. It takes a little longer than a library delivery. We run 5-day-a-week delivery to all of the libraries. Here, we're only able to offer it 2-day-a-week delivery because you need to leave time for people to pick up the stuff in order to reload the lockers. So there is some limitations there. It's not as fast as a library delivery, but it's definitely more accessible than a library delivery.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, when did this, because I'm big into pilot projects, because I think you get to test drive to see if it goes. And I'm just going to let everybody know here, that Commissioner Swatsky, who had this idea, it just didn't come to fruition while he's there, but he was talking about the kiosk and things, I'm not sure where he found. And this is a great opportunity with Sartell, large town without a library, everything else is too close to the other library to actually have one, unless they put it away on the wrong side where they don't want to have it. So it's kind of a good compromise. And I see this in the future, if they can get the price of that unit down a little bit. I could see those in those other towns that are just on the way for the bus, the van route there, but there's no way they can have one, a library, brick and mortar library there. Because the idea is to get more people to have checkouts and that. Have they cured the problem with the people not picking their stuff up right away?
Well, what we have instituted is Jay Roos, our IT associate director, and he did some analysis. And what we found out was that if we drop the whole period down by 1 day, it can clear out in a week's time approximately 16% of the lockers, which equates to 7 to 10 lockers that the distribution assistant can fill twice a week. So it will reduce the backlog a little bit, or the delay down the road. That's the first step that we've taken so far.
Because I know at the beginning there, people weren't coming to pick up their stuff, and people were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. It's like,
and it ties up the collection for everybody, because
Right.
if we only have one copy of a book and it's out in Sartell, that means Buffalo people can't get it either. So we're constantly looking at it. Victoria's had a similar system since, 2010? We were just down there on Friday. They only have 20 lockers, but they're still running it, and they're very happy with it in their community center. Also, they opened a library later, but they still have people using that locker, even though there was a library built after the fact. So it's been kind of interesting to watch.
I think it's a fantastic way to solve that issue up there in Sartell. Because they've made if you pay attention to anything in St. Cloud media, for a few years there, they're the largest cities in the whole state of Minnesota without a library. Like, okay, well, you're right next door to St. Cloud that has a nice library.
One of the biggest libraries in the state, actually. Yeah. And we also have some other new projects coming online this fall. Well, you might have already heard, we decided the Great River Board agreed to no longer charge fines on juvenile materials as of June 1st. So that was an effort toward going fines-free for our kids, and that was very well received. We'll also be launching, because we've been running a surplus the last couple of years, Great River Board approved a project to add wireless printing to all of our libraries. So by the end of the year, you will be able to print from a smartphone at the library. You could also be at home and actually send the print job to the library and go pick it up. So it's a great interface that we're just starting to go live with. August 1st was our first library. So we're ramping that up fairly quickly, but we're excited about being able to offer that as a new service.
Because we got to keep improving all the time.
You can see digital checkouts are still 6% of our activity. Traditional checkouts, 2018. And, oh, I'm sorry, I pulled up the wrong slides here. Let me get you budget one. This is the one I gave you guys last spring. So here's our budget overview for 2020. And a good proportion of our budget comes from our counties. Over 70% of our budget actually comes from the counties that we serve. About 17% is coming from state funding. We just got that number in this last month, and we guessed within $10,000, so we felt pretty good about that.
So the rarity that we actually got the number before we had to set.
We got very close to the number. That's as close as we've been. And the county proportion is based on a 3-part formula. It's borrower numbers, net tax capacity, and population.
And therein lies why every year we pay just a little bit more and more and more.
I do have some statistics here
Yeah,
for
your
you.
population's growing faster and your tax capacity is growing faster. Yep.
Good morning. So for Wright County in 2020, you're looking at $2.1 million, and last year it was 2.1, well, 2.16, 2.15, so pretty much flat in the big scheme of things there. This is just a blown up view of just Wright County, so prior to that, this is all counties and what they've been paying since 2010.
You can see Wright County is orange, it's slowly catching up with Stearns.
Yeah.
It's hard to say if that number will ever surpass Stearns County, but if it does,
Yes,
the
it
number of
will.
board seats assigned would also change.
Correct. So as I stated before, this is a blown up, you can still see the same type of trend here. It looks relatively flat from 19 to 20. I think it was only like a $2,000 increase, or was it $4,000?
For last year.
Okay. One thing I wanted to point out was that Wright County had sizable growth in your population compared with other counties, and you also had steady growth in your net tax capacity. And also a lot of the factors that go into the budget, the population, the registered borrowers, and net tax capacity, most of it shifted to Sherburne County for this budget year. So, which in turn will reduce everybody else's share. So Sherburne County got the bulk of the budget shares this year.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Potter.
Mr. Chair, and a couple years ago, Wright County surpassed Stearns County in net tax capacity. That's all of a sudden, that's where our increase came. The only thing we're behind Stearns County is population. And we will overtake them within about 12 years.
St. Cloud's still growing pretty quickly, but the western part of that county isn't growing as fast, so it'll be interesting to see how those.
There are limitations in Stearns County for what's there,
Yep.
because most of St. Cloud that's growing is the Sherburne County.
Right, exactly, they're on the other side of the river.
And that's where Sherburne County was seeing their big increases, not only at Elk River, but at eastern St. Cloud, that just took off like wildfire up there.
You can see here a breakout by county, the dollars provided, just to give you a comparison. And a lot of this is a reflection of the distance between libraries. For example, Morrison County has 5 libraries, and Benton County has 1 physically located in their county. The bulk of their users actually use St. Cloud, which is in Stearns County. So how these dollars shake out each year vary quite a bit, depending on growth and then tax capacity. Wright County is at the higher end of it right now. You're paying about $16.09 for the year 2020. And overall, Great River's funded at about $19.46 for operational dollars in 2020. Just to give you a comparison point, Great River, if you include all funding sources, including county or city maintenance for the buildings, we were funded at $20.80 for fiscal year 2016. Statewide, the average is $41.56. So even considering those outside indirect sources of funding, Great River's funded at about half of what it costs to run a library across the state of Minnesota.
That goes to show how efficient Great River Library is.
It pays to share. I mean, we give up some of that local control. I think that's the trade-off, but it really does pay to manage the collection as one collection in 32 libraries instead of creating 32 individual collections.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Thank
Commissioner
you,
Potter.
Mr. Chair. And Karen, is it safe to say that Great River Regional Library also is the only one with a hub, St. Cloud being the main hub, where the rest of them are not that structure? They're a little bit different.
Right, like if you look at Lake Agassiz, which is headquartered in Moorhead, or East Central, which is headquartered in Cambridge, they functionally are about the same. But when you look at a city the size of St. Cloud, most of those are not part of a consolidated region. Duluth, for example, is running a main library and 3 smaller libraries at about $4.6 million. And Rochester runs a standalone, and that's a $7 million budget for one building. So with a $9 million budget over 32 libraries, we're spread pretty thin. We just work really hard to provide high quality service. You know, we've got Hennepin County just across the border, and they have an $80 million budget for 41 libraries. And yeah, they're maintaining facilities, but our patrons are expecting that level of service, and we just do the best we can with what we've got.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I'll carry on there. The only other thing is that, they all want more hours, but you got to start doing that. So we've been shifting some hours to match the patterns here. And I know they've been watching traffic patterns and how many people come in here. And like St. Michael with that change, they added the hour and changed it around a little bit, and it's done
Yeah,
good.
they're one of the few libraries that after we made an open hours change, we saw a direct correlation to increased activity. And it had a lot to do with making that schedule more
That
consistent.
consistent schedule, so it's not 9 one day and 1 o'clock the next day. It's all consistent.
Yep. And we'll be looking at that again in October. We're 3 years into our library assessment plan, so we're looking at the next 3 years and how we're going to strategically place open hours in the next couple of years.
To make sure that our hours open match the traffic patterns of the people there. How can they get there and actually utilize the library? It's nothing that's more frustrating getting there and they're closed.
Right, right.
Mr. Chair, Karen, I'm curious about the juvenile fines and how that was decided, and if it's had any impact on revenues, or how that all played out.
It was because Commissioner Potter still had juvenile fines. He was the one that pushed to get that.
He wanted them waived.
He wanted to be forgiven, so,
Now, when my
And, I
kids
mean,
were
is
young,
that
they made a
like-
lot of money off us.
I
Is
can
it
see it
18 and under,
did
or
stem
what?
from a desire to get books in the hands of kids on the part of everyone. Last year, if you remember, we did fines forgiveness in September for the first time. We've been running a surplus several years going, so our cash reserves were at a point where the board said, let's spend that 0.4 months worth of reserve on improving library activity. So we experimented with fines forgiveness, and we waived over $40,000 last year in that 2-week period in September. But we didn't think we would have the same level of impact if we repeated it again, and we didn't want people to get into the habit of, well, we'll just wait till September, and then we'll just get our fines waived and come back. So we went back to the mission and what was it we were trying to accomplish, and how many fines are levied on item type, on type of card, and how can we make this easiest. And we felt like it was, and the easiest way to get books in the hands of kids is not worry whose card it was. Is it an adult card? Is it a kid's card? But whoever's checking out a kid's easy book is probably not checking it out just for themselves. They're checking it out for a kid. And when we looked at fines revenue, it was about $40,000 in revenue that we were getting just from juvenile materials. So we felt like it was a give and take in terms of the fines forgiveness effort last time. It's a little early to tell what the impact has been, because the fines change only started June 1st, and fines wouldn't have been accrued till the end of summer. So we're just starting to see the impact on revenue. It hasn't been substantial at this point. It's hard to tell what's from the fines change and what's just been people's change in activity.
I have not seen a change.
Yeah, it hasn't been a major change.
So that's the beauty of that. If we see a troubling pattern, we can change it.
Right. And it isn't, if somebody never brings a book back, they'll still get charged for the book. So it's not that we aren't making sure people are being held
Okay.
accountable. If there's an impact to the collection, we'll be able to fix that fairly quickly. But it's been a pretty positively received change, especially for kids this summer for the summer reading program. I believe we're going to see an uptick in activity for summer reading program, which was one of the goals of the change, so.
And one last thing before we get on to 9:30 here. With some of the surplus, we did some of those projects for do express checkout for the single-staffed libraries and we've gone through quite a few of them. We don't have that many left, but they have to make sense to do it. But it's really helped on some of those smaller libraries to free up staff time to do with the patrons when somebody just wants to check out a book and they know how to do it. I think it's gone over well, and every library it's got, it's loving it.
Yeah, one of the goals with that project was making sure that if a person came in and needed help on the computer or on a device, that staff could spend at least 10 minutes helping them. But if you've got a line of people just wanting to check out their thing, it's really hard to do that with single staffing. So the express checkouts have been fantastic. We have over half of our libraries now with express checkouts, which is a big marker when you consider I think it's 7 of them are only open 20 hours a week. So I don't know how many more we'll be installing. Some of the buildings just don't warrant it because the wiring's just not there. But like Kimball, for example, is a small building. They don't even have space for more than one internet station right now, but they did get a grant to build a new building, and we're hoping that'll be open within the next couple of years. Once that happens and they have a facility, it's pretty likely we'd put an express check there as well.
One last comment. I know people appreciate the free wireless at the library here because you see people parked in the evenings and, you know, they're on their devices. So anyway,
Big number for us too.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Potter, for being on their board and.
Well, I'm going to be terming out pretty soon, so one of you is going to have to get on there.
It's a fun
We don't want you to
board.
go.
Mike's done a remarkable
I
job.
didn't want
would
Jim
say-
Shovelin to go. That's what I didn't want to go.
Yeah, he's been a
That
big
guy's
loss.
amazing.
We've got Dan Bravender and who else do we have from Wright?
You know, we get people there that care.
What's her name?
Oh, yep. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good information. All right. And we're just about right on time for our public hearing for the property tax abatement related to the Trailblazer facility.
Board, if you don't mind, I'm just going to kick this off. This is the time schedule that we had for drafting this bond. We have Chris Mickelson here from Ellers to walk us through. Here we are on September 3rd, so today we're having the public hearing on the tax abatement bonds. I'm going to have Chris walk you through this.
Why don't you hand out paper copies? I sent it to electronically, but.
So thank you, Board Chair and Commissioners. Thank you, Bob. Myself and my colleague Bruce Kimmel have been working with the county here to prepare for this, what we're calling Series 2019C, General Obligation Tax Abatement Bond issue. Right now, it's in an estimated principal amount of $5,215,000. Is this, just to confirm, is this pre-sale report in front of you? No?
It was distributed electronically, but
Oh,
did
okay,
not print this morning, so would you like me to make copies for them, or?
You know, if you, do they have electronic devices that they could access it right now?
No.
Or would it be sufficient just to walk through it?
Yeah, that's fine. You can-
On the overhead?
It's fine there.
I've seen it, yeah.
So as shown in the report here, this proposed issue will be to finance the defeasance of the City of Buffalo's existing general obligation tax abatement bond issue, that is Series 2015C, issued in the aggregate principal amount of $3,400,000. Currently outstanding on that is $2,970,000. And then there will also be a second component of this, which will finance the costs associated with the expansion of the Trailblazer facility. It's expected that payments received from Trailblazer will be sufficient to fund 100% of the county's debt service requirement. And so what that means is, as those payments are received by the county will be able to cancel that abatement levy annually. And so in essence, as those payments are received, that abatement is not needed. And in fact, Trailblazer will pre-fund that for the first year to ensure that, because debt service kicks off, you know, right away on this, and we'll get to that. But by pre-funding this by approximately $350,000, then that ensures that that first year's abatement can also be canceled.
So in other words, for the public, it's, at this point, there is no cost to the levying public.
That's correct.
In Wright County.
That's correct. So long
Money in,
as,
money out.
so long as those revenues are received from Trailblazer, then that abatement levy is canceled and there will be no tax impact to the taxpayers. Exactly. The statutory authority that allows this mechanism to occur for debt issuance is Chapter 469, and then also the general bonding authority is Chapter 475. 469 states that the maximum annual abatement capacity is either $200,000 or 10% of the municipality's net tax capacity. The county has an NTC currently of over $167 million. And so in this case, for Wright County, the annual abatement cannot exceed that 16.7 million amount. For this specific issue, debt service is under, it's approximately $350,000, but just under $350,000. And so this will use approximately 2% of the county's total abatement capacity, and that's really what brought this to be in the first place, is the city of Buffalo is slammed right up against their abatement capacity. They're using all of it. And so to fund that defeasance escrow, the county will in essence take that off of the city of Buffalo's books so that they can take on additional projects with that abatement capacity. For this bond issue, it will be a 20-year term, and principal will begin here December 1st, 2020, concluding 2039, and interest payable every 6 months beginning June 1st, 2020. And there will be a call feature on this that will be callable December 1st, 2029 for that December 1st, 2030 maturity and all those thereafter. County's current general obligation bond rating is AA+ through Standard & Poor's, and this will also be rated by S&P. And the basis of recommendation section that lays out why this would be the best possible financing mechanism. You can see there that the competitive sale approach is something that the county has used historically. That is the best practices method as recommended through GFOA. Utilizing the county's very strong AA+ GEO credit rating gives the lowest cost of capital and ultimately makes these monthly payments from Trailblazer the lowest possible by using this type of financing. And the method of sale for this would be that competitive sale, as I discussed just a minute ago. So the national bond market will be accessed for this. A full preliminary official statement will be created and released in advance of that sale. We're expecting a sale date to be September 30th, and then the award, we would come back before the board the next morning of October 1st. And that schedule shows that the closing, the date that the county would receive proceeds, and when that defeasance escrow could be funded would be estimated now at October 24th here of 2019.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Dillon.
When we did the highway building, we did a local
Bank qualified finance.
You said this is going to be the national bond. Is there any advantage to doing the bank qualified financing or allowing the local banks to do this?
So to your question, because the county has issued more than $10 million in bonds here in 2019,
That's right.
then that takes BQ off the table, so the county cannot issue these bank qualified.
Okay.
Bank qualified still would be accessing the nationwide bond market. That's just a very specific bit of tax code that allows these banks that do buy the bonds to be able to deduct their cost of carry. Basically, they're buying bonds with depositors' money that they're then paying interest to those depositors, and a very small amount of interest, but they're paying that interest to those depositors to use that money to buy bonds. If bonds are bank qualified, they get to deduct that little bit of interest that they are paying to depositors, and that allows them to bid even a little bit more competitively, even just a little bit lower interest rate. But in all truth, as the rates have gotten so low, those BQ to non-BQ spreads really compress. And so right now, there might be a few basis points of gain by being able to designate these BQ, but being that we really are in the lowest interest rate environment we've ever seen, that spread is very minimal. As the yields creep up, you start seeing quality spreads widen, you start seeing BQ spreads kind of widen, but right now there's not a very significant advantage to being BQ versus non-BQ.
Okay. Thank you.
We've already laid out the schedule, so I'll skip through that page on here. The next thing that this report includes is the Summary sources and uses. So you can see on this column here would be the proposed refinance of the Buffalo 15C bonds. That is what would fund that defeasance escrow. That call date is in the spring of 2024, and so this would take care of both the principal payments for 24 and beyond, but then also the interest payments now until 2024, at which point those bonds would be taken out. And then the new money portion, that would be for the expansion of the Trailblazer facility. This might get a little too fine to see, but this is the proposed debt service schedule. The estimated rate on this is 3.01%, although this does have 25 basis points of cushion in it. And this was actually run about a month ago when rates have since come down even more. So I would say, maybe in the ballpark of 2.5% is my best guess as of today. Maybe most importantly to touch on here is that far right column. Average principal and interest payments annually approximately $350, although I think it comes out to about $348.5 or so. This is the debt service schedule specifically for the defeasance escrow portion. Average annual debt service on that is approximately $210,000. This shows the for this type of transaction, this page isn't very meaningful, as this isn't a refunding for savings, but rather a refunding for structuring, basically. So I won't spend much time on this one. And here is the new money schedule.
No, we're going to only be issuing one bond?
Correct. These purposes will be combined into a single
To
series.
defease the one and for the expansion of the other part.
And that's it. We typically will include a resolution setting the sale of the bonds, but in the resolution, the abatement resolution that Julie Eddington, the bond attorney, provided, that takes care of that. And so with that combined resolution, when you consider that, that will both put the abatement in place and then also give us our marching orders to proceed with this bond sale. Again, the sale would occur September 30th. The award would be that next morning of October 1st. With that, any questions that you may have, happy to address.
Members, before we open up the public, does anybody have any questions, comments? All right. I also invited Gary Ludwig here on behalf of Trailblazer in case anybody, public or from the board, have any questions. He'll be here to facilitate those questions as well. With that, I will open up the public hearing. It doesn't look like there's anyone here today to speak regarding the public hearing regarding the Trailblazer facility, but I will ask 3 times here. Would anyone like to speak regarding this public hearing for the property tax abatement? Would anyone like to speak? Once again, would anyone like to speak? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Dahlheiden to close the public hearing. Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public hearing is now closed. Now we'll look forward for a motion to approve the resolution approving a property tax abatement related to the Trailblazer facility.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Potter,
Second.
second by Commissioner Dahlheiden. Is there any other further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Potter?
I want to thank Ehlers and the city of Buffalo and Gary. This has been a long work in progress to try to, because when we first looked at defeasing this bond, it was ungodly expensive for the citizens of Wright County to do that, but they found a way to make it happen without it being, outrageously expensive to us. So I applaud all parties for doing that, and Buffalo's patience. I know they wanted to get this done quickly, but I just told them I can't do it the way it was at until they figure out another way to make the numbers work. So thank you.
And at this advantage, the way this is set up, it actually won't cost
No,
the taxpayers,
it will not.
which is the most important thing.
Absolutely, and I appreciate Auditor Treasurer Bob Hevel and his staff for spending a good deal of time going back and forth to get us to this day here today. So thank you for that. With that, then, we have a motion, we have a second. If there's no other comments, this is a resolution. Commissioner Potter?
Aye.
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 Resolution passes 4-0. So we will be looking at the sale on September 30th, and we'll be receiving those back in our first meeting, was that October 1st? October 1st, we'll be bringing back to accept those rates at that time. All right,
Thank you.
great, thank you. All right, now we're down to just a couple things left on the agenda for items for consideration. We have the committee of the whole minutes from August 29th. Mr. Kelly, you want to walk us through it real briefly here? Would you mind?
Sure.
Was it, no, 29th, oh yeah, 29th, did I say that? It's, yeah, August 29th, I'm sorry, I thought I said 28th. So, committee of the whole was regarding the tactical center bids, and then we also had a discussion, where Mr. Kelly gets ready here, on the third floor at the government center. So,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee of the Whole, August 29th. All four of the commissioners were in attendance, including myself, representatives of the Sheriff's Office, the FBI, BKV Group, and RJM Construction Management. As you mentioned, first topic was the Tactical Training Center bids. Documents were distributed as were attached. Brad Berkman from RJM mentioned that we'd received 147 bids. The numbers are trending about $500,000 lower than the last project updates, and they are recommending awards in all bid categories. Berkman also went over the alternate bids, which included eliminating a folding partition, shelling the indoor range, and removing the bullet traps in the outdoor range. We talked quite a bit at length about the budget of the project relative to the bonding amount that we had taken out. Some of the discussion centered around the cost of the technology in the data center being a bit of an ambiguous number at this time. We're carrying a conservative number in there and feel that that could potentially be reduced by approximately $100,000. We did talk about the alternate of shelling the indoor firing range, or not building it, or building it but not equipping it right away, as well as we talked about utilizing some existing furniture that would be here at the government center that could be moved over there, as well as a grant that the Sheriff's Office may be able to secure for some emergency operations center equipment in that facility. One other discussion point I raised in talking with other staff in the Auditor Treasurer's Office and Ellers, we're looking very good at our project budgets on both the Justice Center and looking good based on the bids that we've received with the Government Center, and there may be some opportunity to shift some funds down the road to put towards this project as needed. So again, talked about a few of the different alternates and the prices along with that. It seemed that the consensus, or the preference at least, was to build the entire tactical training center at this time and address any potential gap in funding as we hone in on the numbers through some of those items that I mentioned previously. One thing I did want to mention regarding the precast concrete, the bidder Huff Cut had an error in their bid, but was willing to honor the price that they gave. And secondly, on structural steel, RJM was recommending to go with the second bidder, Patriot Erectors. Several attempts were made to reach the low bidder, Max Steel, but we're not able to as of the time of the meeting date. So the recommendation was to award the Tactical Training Center bids to the recommended contractors at the 9/3/19 County Board meeting for a total estimated project cost of $9.3 million and authorize signatures on those contracts. The second item discussed was the third floor at the new Government Center. This was in response to a letter received from BKV Group regarding shelling some space on that third floor. This is based on bids that came in very aggressive on the new Government Center and look at shelling some space on that third floor being considered. Schwartzman from BKV detailed what those items were as part of their proposal and proposed that it would be a not-to-exceed figure of $178,030. So the recommendation for the second item was to authorize BKV to commence with additional drawings and work related to the expansion of the third floor at a cost not to exceed $178,030 and authorize the board chair to sign the additional service memo. Summary of the minutes, Mr. Chair.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes and the recommendations.
I'll second
A
that.
motion by Commissioner Potter, second by Commissioner Hewsome. First of all, I want to note that the 9.3 on that is an estimated project cost that's overly inflated because the scope of the fiber and the technology was over-scoped on it, as I think I'm safe to say. So it's potentially $350,000 over, so it's more of a $9 million project, not a $9.3 million project. I just want to make sure that that goes for the record.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that is one area that we've had quite a bit of discussion, that there was a large contingency carried in that technology-related items. We typically don't do fiber installations, so we want to be very cautious in our contingency in that area, so.
Mr. Kreisler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. If I could, just for purposes of discussion, on following up on the steel erection contract, going with the second bidder, a supplemental reason that staff is also recommending going with, is it Precision or Parson?
Patriot.
The reason why we're recommending Patriot over Max Steel Erectors has to do with the fact that Max Steel Erectors is currently operating in Chatham Township in a residential zoning district. We currently have 2 criminal files that have pending against that business operation for violating our zoning ordinances. And a search warrant was also executed at the business, and drug paraphernalia was found, and the principal has been charged with third-degree drug possession for possessing over 10 grams of methamphetamines. So Wright County does have a drug-free workplace, and I also believe that you need to follow our laws if you want to get a contract with the county.
Mr. Chair.
Very good point.
Also, if I recall this, didn't Max Wrecker have a serious discrepancy in their bid, where all the rest of them were nice and tight where they're supposed to be, and there was something wrong with the bid right from the get-go?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Potter, yeah, I believe they came in at $78,000 for Max Steel, and everyone else was around the $178, $160 average. So huge discrepancy there. And all this information coupled with the lack of investigation, I think, shows that they're not a responsible bidder in this particular instance.
As the attorney says, easier to stay out than get out.
I appreciate your due diligence on this and bringing forward good information for us to make a good decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. With that, I think with contingencies and with the overscoping of the IT and stuff on it, I feel like pretty confident that this will probably be more well under the $9 million project, not so much of the price tag that we're seeing at this point. So we'll be closer to what the original estimates, I believe, when it comes down towards the end, closer to at least.
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
And Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Potter.
Let's item here. If you understand the law of averages, we've been very fortunate on a few of these large projects to come way under. So if this one is just a slight over, we should be happy that the only one that's over is the smallest project we got going on, not the big ones. I mean, because to have the Justice Center or the admin building being $6 million or something like that, same percentage over, would be devastating. This one, you know, we are kind of running on 2-year-old numbers to start with. And some of this equipment is like, what, 1 or 2 vendors in the whole nation, whole world that do this. They can do whatever they want with those numbers. So it's kind of one of those, you know, and I had a couple people ask me, well, we should have had the FBI pay more. Well, we entered into an agreement with them based on some numbers, and we accepted that money. It'd be hard pressed to go back and ask them for another $800,000 or $600,000 or something. Is that
We were a competitive bid for that too. I mean, it was kind of take this or we'll find somebody else to do it with.
Right.
It wasn't like we were that they're desperate to go with us. So
That's what the public doesn't understand what this is, because these were all based on good faith estimates of what it was going to be, and here's what we'll pay. And quite a bit of the building changed in scope from just being the shooting range to all of a sudden the EOC backup 911, data center and everything else. It changed in scope from the first talks we had, when that's where the price kept going up and up and up.
Correct, and that, you know, Mr. Chair, that is for Wright County it's not part of the FBI training.
Correct.
So when they come out for their shooting and their other training exercises, they won't be using,
Yeah.
our data center and our backup dispatch, and these are things that we need in our county. So it'll be great when it's out there, and we've got the assurance that we've got the backup that we need.
I think it's a great opportunity when you partner with the FBI. You're going to have the latest, greatest training techniques and what's coming at you and a chance to train with them. How can that be bad for us?
Exactly.
Yes, Commissioner
No,
Nick.
if I remember correctly, when we had our meeting with the FBI, I thought they also said they would probably have some funds available during the years.
For the indoor range piece, because if they used it, there was some talk that they could have a contract with us for using the indoor
Yeah.
range, because that wasn't part of the scope of the work, or.
So
that
there
was
there
something
may
that
be
there's
some
potential.
offset in the future.
I think there's future revenue opportunities for that facility, so I think that's
Definitely.
something that will be scoped out once it's done, so. or-
Well, at least our deputies won't have to be going up to St. Cloud and that sort of place, stuff to do there.
Well, there's expense saving, there's
It
savings
is.
in expenses.
It is. It costs a lot of money, so this will be it will offset the cost of their training, definitely.
So with that, we have a motion and we have a second to approve the minutes and the recommendations. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And recommendations are approved from the August 29th Committee of the Whole. Advisory minutes updates. Who wants to start off? Commissioner Hewsome?
I was at the Regional Crime Lab. I have to make sure all the meetings I was at. Regional Crime Lab meeting on last week, and we approved the 2020 budget. We talked about there's a couple of positions they're going to be looking at requesting in the 2021 budget, but we've actually, the last time we added any positions was in 2014, so they've been running quite lean, particularly since they've seen such increases in the cases, their case submissions. So they've had a lot going on and has some recommendations from meeting as a work group to try to figure out, what they should do with all these submissions that are coming in. And they have I don't know if I brought that sheet with me. Since all the submissions have gone up so much, they're limiting like trace amounts and marijuana. They're looking at submitting more smartly, so they need to reach the threshold of, is this a case that's going to be, they're going to be able to prosecute. So everything that comes into their lab, they're testing, but they recognize that there's probably not reason to do a lot of these testings. So they're looking at some of that. They also, what I appreciate every month is getting some of our success reports and the things that they've done to find people and put them in jail. Now I'm shifting these sheets around so I find it. But, yeah, there we go. I'll put it under here. Some of the things that they've done in July is they have these hits. They've had burglary. They're 4 forensic hits for a case in Roseville PD, Oakdale PD, Burnsville, Ramsey, auto theft, biology, a forensic hit to a Wright County Sheriff's Office burglary. In Wright County, there was a hit, and they found a convicted sex offender. So the sample was collected from underwear. There was another one in Wright County where it was a theft and a forensic hit to a Edina PD auto theft. There were just a couple of these, but every time I read these successes, it's like this is money well spent because it's a benefit to all the people in our counties and really to the state, because a lot of these things are found, you know, a burglary happens here, well, they link it to others in other parts of the state, so getting offenders off the streets as much as possible. But so anyway, that's, we also had our Central Minnesota Emergency Medical Services on Friday continue to look for a stable funding source. We had to cut back so much with our grants that we can give to our local fire departments and emergency medical services folks. So looking for the stable funding source, and we have a little problem with the EMS regulatory board at the state level. But we are going to be we're out of Narcan, and our different agencies are looking for more of that, but we'll be getting some more in November. So that's something that's going to be a few months where they have to wait, but they're saving a lot of lives out there.
Wow, it's amazing, because that was a lot of Narcan when we had to start the year. That's pretty amazing that we've used it already this early in the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what our sheriff's office still has, but I mean, just at our region level, we've given all the kits out, so we are waiting for more kits to come in. Yeah, she used a lot of them.
Wow.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Potter.
Take off Commissioner Hewsom's. I think we're getting an incredible bargain with that crime lab set up.
I agree.
We're getting samples, DNA, all these things back, solving crimes, and some of these have time constraints to them. And I think we're coming out way ahead on being part of that. And I think if the public really knew how much savings there was there, they wouldn't question this at all. I mean, we get the half a dozen people that question us being in that, but I still think we're getting incredible value there.
Right, I mean, when you look at the turnaround time that they have on a lot of these, I mean, major cases, we're talking felony cases, and their turnaround time on DNA may be, 7 days, it might be 31 days. It's a very fast turnaround. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, of course, they do a wonderful job too, but they don't take things, they don't take trace amounts or trace DNA or touch DNA.
Yeah, and it's not high priority for them anyway.
They're those kinds of property crimes that actually can have a very big impact on our citizens, but they just don't have the capacity to swab a steering wheel and send in that sample for trace DNA.
Very good. All right. Last week was busy with budget week all week, and then I had a number of individual meetings with citizens on Ditch 33, so still working down my list here, so reach out to me if you haven't talked to me yet on the questions you have about Ditch 33.
Why would people have questions on Ditch 33?
Well, because we're educating people on ditch law.
Yeah, it's so funny how that ditch law is so confusing and
It is.
all the different requirements.
Yeah.
It's a challenging.
It's very difficult to people understand that a county ditch does not mean the county owns a ditch, and that's
Well, and I think the misnomer is that everybody looks at it, they think that embankment in the front of their house from the road, and that's not the ditch we're talking about.
Yep. Now it's what I had thought originally. Last week, Commissioner Vetch and I were in the technology committee, and there was a lot of deep discussions, and we'll get our new IT director in place, and he seems to be a go-getter and is really excited about being here and getting things going. One of the discussions we did have, and it was on the consent agenda, is that we found out the bottleneck, one of our bottlenecks, is that we don't have enough business analysts to keep moving forward on some of these projects. Since there's been a lot of open positions this year in IT, and BA was one of the recommendations for next year, we approved it to start as soon as possible to help eliminate some of our backloads. Now, we'll be meeting again on the 11th in the late morning before we meet here in the afternoon regarding the bodies, on how many people we're going to get, so. Hopefully, at that point, we'll have an idea on prioritization of some of the IT projects in the CIP, along with what the cost is going to be and what we can realistically do.
Right.
And the idea was too, because we need that fleet management software done sooner than later, because they really don't, they're operating on paper and pens over in the highway department at this point. So this new BA will hopefully be able to help get that facilitated and get it completed, partially completed, at least for the highway departments, not for the county-wide aspect of it, but for the highway departments by.
Yeah, and it's cloud posted or hosted, so we need a BA to figure out exactly what's involved with IT. So everybody says cloud hosted, so there's nothing the county has to do, but that's not quite true. So anyway, I'm looking forward to the 11th and the excitement that seems to be in that department right now.
Absolutely.
And then, I don't know if you guys, you get the email from Steve Bott at the City of St. Michael. He sends out a weekly email.
Yeah, I get that.
Did you have a chance to look at that?
Not this weekend.
Okay, well, I would go to the bottom of it, and there's a link for, the school district had this video, and one of our deputies was a really great singer in it.
Torkelson?
No, Drew Sharber.
Sure.
Really?
So, it was quite interesting.
Is that the one that trolled around Facebook? Is that video of? There was one that was on Facebook for a while with St. Michael, kind of their football field and a bunch of their other facilities.
Yeah, new facilities with,
Yep.
yeah, and I just.
I didn't watch long enough to catch Drew singing it.
Yeah, it Drew's at the very end. It's.
Oh, I didn't watch it long enough.
He was horse trading with the superintendent in St. Michael about whether or not she should get a ticket. And she said, well, is there anything else I can do? And the next thing you see is them all singing in the bus.
Oh, so was it like a rap or was it like country western? Yeah.
I'm not sure how to describe it. I would just recommend that you listen to it. And then just also recommend that Drew doesn't quit his day job.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna have to snip it out here so we can play it next week here for everybody that can't find it. We should. We could have Drew come in and give us a new rendition of it, but county version.
Oh, and just so you know, the reason that Drew is on that is because he is the board chair for the St. Michael School.
Tweet it.
Tweet it, yeah, tweet it.
Anyway, it was interesting. That's it.
That's it?
That's enough.
All right. Well, now we know there's a Star is Born over there, the Sheriff's Department.
I wouldn't say a star.
Just asking them.
Hey, now we know that the sheriff's department can do their budget to music next year. Drew has already signed up.
Another department, yeah, that's what we need. Okay, I-94 Coalition met last Thursday. Kind of review of the DC trip, what our chance for the build grant, $25 million, times two, one in Maple Grove and one out here. The chance of getting that. We're still working on, we got all the support letters from all the senators, all the congressmen, everything else. We're still trying to get a Transportation Secretary Cho out here. They've dialed in a couple dates, and she doesn't want to be here when it's really cold because she doesn't like cold. But so we're trying to get her in here sometime this month or early next month, prior to the awarding, which is the 20th of October-ish, somewhere in there, for this grant. I know there's like 770 some applicants, which they have what's called the high pile and the low pile. We'll be on the low pile, which means the ones to be considered, because most of them don't meet the criteria. They only have $900 million to go around the country, which won't fund that many projects, but hopefully we're one of them. The strongest asset we have with Anthony Bedell from the FHWA Federal Highway is the fact that this is the last piece to complete 40 miles of one of the most congested segments in our state. which did raise an eyebrow with them, that it'd be nice to have one whole segment done here. So I'm hoping that.
Everybody would love that one.
And Congressman Emmer has been on this. A year ago when I went out with a group and we went to Representative McCullum's fundraiser, and it got to expound on the importance of 94, not just to Wright County, but to her constituents over in Ramsey County and St. Paul, because that's the main corridor from Chicago to Seattle for transportation, transit, and freight. So, and she's on the Appropriations Committee, which is always nice to have that extra body that says, yeah, we like this. She does have a lot of power in that one. She's a ranking member. So hopefully we get Cho out here, because if she gets to see this, maybe that's just enough to push it over. Looking forward to that. There's talk about possibly going at the end of this month with a very small group out there for the one-day push. And more to come on that. I'm not sure how big that group should be. It'd probably like, 3 or 4, and that's it. More to come on that one. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Administrator Kelly.
All right. Hope everybody enjoyed their holiday weekend. I know it was good from my staff, and nice to have a few days to spend with the family. Nice to have a little bit of a break, as we've been heavy into the budget stuff, and that's been taking a lot of the time. Actually, today I'll be diving back in with IT on some of their capital improvement things, and looking to have some numbers and projects lined up as we come into the tech committee next week. So that's spending a lot of time right now with budget-related things. And of course, handing off with the new IT director, Mr. Fomby. Had a real good meeting with him on Friday. Talked about some of his thoughts and kind of where the county's been and where he's thinking he might want to take it. So definitely very active guy.
Good.
Definitely
So
very
we knew.
passionate. So it's fun talking with him. So had the opportunity to attend the Monticello Economic Development Group on, I think it was the 28th. They were talking about UMC is doing expansion in the future, and as we're working on different policies regarding tax abatement and revolving loan fund, we're getting a lot of questions from different cities asking me about that. So more to come on that potentially in the future, but very interesting meeting. So
There's some good information that we will be presenting to you guys. That was the same meeting that I was with Mr. Kelly, and we just, I didn't want to bring it up at this point, but we'll talk about it more, because there's a request we got to, but I'm glad that you brought that up, Mr. Kelly, just about, it's quite a substantial expansion there that's going to be happening in Monticello, and it's a really good win deal for Wright County, and we were talking 60-plus jobs in a 2-year period of time that are all jobs that are over $50,000 a year jobs, and with the chance of in the next 5 to 10 years to growing to well over 100 positions.
Wow.
Great.
And they're not the only city that's inquiring on that, as Lee knows.
yes, I've become a very popular person.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Everybody's new best friend.
Yes.
We will have to, it will be that committee of the whole that's coming up here, a lot of good discussions. I think, I know myself, if any of you, I think it's going to be helpful that we talk to Administrator Kelly and kind of give him some ideas of what you'd want included in that policy, because I think to speed the process along, it'd be nice for Administrator Kelly to bring forward some options of a possible policy versus us just sitting down at a table and trying to draft it out of nothing. So I know myself, I've sat down there and gave him some of the parameters that I would like to see within it, but I'm hoping all of you will kind of do the same, so that way he can kind of put together some A, B, and C options, and we can tweak it from there.
Yep, we've gathered several examples from multiple jurisdictions, also including the county level, so.
Maybe you want to
something's-
email them out to the group so they can
Sure.
get an idea, and then they can kind of submit back to you on their thoughts.
Sure.
Maybe
There's some similarities, some differences, so
Yeah, good plan.
Yep. All right.
that's all I had.
With that, then, I guess if there's no other business to attend to today, then we will adjourn at 10:15.